Welcome to Rise Untold, where the stories behind the spotlight come alive, the stage lights dim, the crowd chants his name, and somewhere in the shadows, a man who once ruled the stage takes his final bow. Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of Darkness today. Voice that could shake stadium walls, now silenced forever to millions. He was a living legend, but behind that wild, untamed persona was a man who carried a lifetime of pain. And when the end came, it was as much a release as it was a tragedy. This is not just the story of how he died, it's the story of how he lived and suffered in ways the world never fully understood, before the fame, before the madness, before the music changed him forever. There was John Michael Osbourne, born in Birmingham, England, in December 1948, in a cramped working-class home. The young boy's life was anything but glamorous. His father worked nights at a factory. His mother was a shop worker. Money was scarce. Happiness? Even scarcer. Ozzy struggled in school, not because he wasn't smart, but because he was different, that he battled undiagnosed dyslexia, and every classroom became a place of humiliation. Bullies mocked him, teachers dismissed him, and somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered, "You don't belong here." By his teens, he found himself drawn to music, not as a dream, but as an escape. That he didn't just want to sing, that he needed to, because every note was a way to drown out the noise in his head. But before the music saved him, life dragged him down. Petty crimes that a short stint in prison for burglary that it could have ended there, just another forgotten kid from the streets. But fate had other plans. When Ozzy joined forces with Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, and Bill Ward, something explosive was born. Black Sabbath wasn't just a band. It was the birth of heavy metal, dark, loud, rebellious, and Ozzy was its voice. His scream became the anthem of a generation that didn't fit in. His stage presence, unpredictable, chaotic, sometimes terrifying, made him a rock god. But with fame came temptation. And temptation came with a price: drugs, alcohol, that a lifestyle so extreme it blurred the line between life and death every single day. There were nights he couldn't remember, mornings he wished he couldn't. And yet, fans saw only the rock star, the wild man who bit the head off a bat, the MTV icon, the unstoppable force. But behind closed doors, he was falling apart. His first marriage crumbled under the weight of addiction, that he spiraled into depression so deep that even music couldn't pull him out. And when he met Sharon, the world thought she saved him. And maybe she did. For a while, Sharon became his manager, his wife, his lifeline. She fought for him when others walked away. She stood by him through relapses, arrests, and near-death overdoses. But their love story wasn't perfect. It was violent, that it was messy, that it was real. That by the 2000s, the world met a different Ozzy, the reality TV star from the Osbournes. Millions laughed at his mumbled speech, his confused ramblings, his eccentric family life. But what they didn't know was that the years of substance abuse had taken their toll. Ozzy wasn't just funny, that he was struggling. Then came the diagnosis, that Parkinson's disease, that a slow thief that robs you of control over your own body. For a man who once commanded the stage with raw power, it was a cruel twist of fate. The tremors, the stiffness, the exhaustion. Every performance became a battle, every day a reminder that time was running out. And yet, he refused to stop, even when doctors warned him, even when his body begged for rest. Ozzy kept touring, kept recording, kept giving fans the version of him they wanted, even if it was killing him. Friends say the last few years were some of his most difficult. Multiple surgeries, falls that left him in agony, hospital stays that drained his strength. But the hardest part? Knowing he could no longer be the Ozzy the world remembered. When the news of his passing broke, it was like the end of an era. The streets of Birmingham lit up with candles. Fans around the world posted tributes. Old Black Sabbath records flew off shelves. And for a brief moment, the noise of the modern world fell silent, replaced by the echoes of his voice. His funeral was both grand and intimate. Rock legends stood beside factory workers, celebrities beside lifelong fans, all united by the same truth. Ozzy Osbourne was more than a musician, that he was a survivor, that a fighter, that a man who took the pain life gave him and turned it into anthems that will outlive us all. And maybe that's the real story. Not the drugs, not the scandals, not even the music, but The fact that through it all, he kept going. Because you see, the world loves to talk about the rise and the fall. They love the headlines, the chaos, the shock factor, but what they rarely talk about is the middle, the years when the spotlight moves just slightly off you, when the cheers fade to murmurs, when the people who said they'd be there forever start drifting away. That's where the real fight happens. Not on the stage, not in the recording booth, but in the quiet moments, when you're staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., wondering if you've already lived the best years of your life. Ozzy had those nights. Nights where the fame meant nothing, where the money, the gold records, the sold-out tours, all felt like dust in his hands, because none of it could take away the pain in his body. None of it could erase the years lost to addiction. None of it could stop the ticking clock in his head, but he kept going. Even when his legs shook from Parkinson's. Even when his voice cracked where it used to roar. Even when his mind whispered that maybe it was time to stop, he kept walking toward that stage, kept stepping into that blinding light, kept giving the crowd a piece of himself, even if it was all he had left. And that's what made Ozzy Osbourne different. He wasn't just a performer, he was a fighter. Not the kind that throws punches, but the kind that refuses to let life dictate the terms of his surrender. Because if a boy from the gray streets of Birmingham could rise to become the Prince of Darkness and still make the world love him, maybe there's hope for all of us. Hope for the ones who feel invisible. Hope for the ones who think their mistakes define them. Hope for the ones who believe it's too late to change the ending of their story. Ozzy's life was messy, chaotic, full of decisions he probably wished he could take back. But it was also beautiful, because every scar told a story. Every failure taught him something. Every stumble made the next step stronger. When the world saw a washed-up rocker mumbling on reality TV, he knew the truth, that behind the cameras and the edits, he was still the same kid who used to dream of escaping the factories of Birmingham. And that kid never really gave up. Yet there's a kind of magic in that. The magic of refusing to be defined by your worst day. Of refusing to let the darkest parts of your story erase the light. And Ozzy carried that magic to his very last breath. Fans remember the voice, the power, the madness, but maybe the thing worth remembering most is that he didn't have to get up some mornings. No one would have blamed him for staying in bed. No one would have judged him for walking away from it all. But he still got up, and when the music played, he still sang, even in those final shows. When the notes didn't come as easily and the energy wasn't the same, the crowd didn't care, because it wasn't about perfection. It was about presence. It was about being there, in the moment, knowing it could be the last time, and giving it everything anyway. That's what made him unforgettable. Not just the bad incident, not just the chaos of the Osbournes, not just the countless gold records, but the simple truth that he kept showing up, for the music, for the fans, for himself. And when the end came, people didn't mourn just the rock star. They mourned the man who taught them that even the broken can still be brilliant, that even the tired can still keep going, that even when you've lost almost everything, you can still give something to the world. Oh, maybe this isn't just Ozzy's story. Maybe it's yours, because if he could take the mistakes, the pain, the humiliation, and still stand in front of thousands with his head held high, then maybe you can survive whatever stage of life you're in right now. Maybe your best years aren't behind you. Maybe they're just waiting for you to decide to fight for them. And maybe that's why we call him the Prince of Darkness. Not because of the music, not because of the theatrics, but because he learned to live in the dark and still find a way to shine. Oh, remember this. The headlines will always fade. The noise will always quiet. The lights will eventually dim. But the story you write in the quiet moments will outlive you. And if they could survive that and still rise, maybe you can too.